All right. Well, good evening, everyone. The Google Hangout that the small market broadcasters do with Sag-Aftra. I am Stephen Juenmal. I am a co-chair of the small market broadcasters group. I've been co-chair since 2015, and I'm always excited to be a part of this hangout with Sag-Aftra. They have such valuable information and advice, not just for this hangout, but when we're actually at the convention. Right now, we're joined by two Sag-Aftra representatives on camera, and one is on the way. And so I will let them introduce themselves. We are expecting Mary, Ellen, and Amy. And Mary, we've talked before, but for those of us who are just tuning in or who are going to be watching on the AAJA YouTube live stream, Mary, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Stephen. My name is Mary Caballero. I'm the Chief Broadcast Officer for Sag-Aftra, and it's a pleasure to once again be partnered with the AAJA on this year's convention, and to be involved in this Google Hangout again. I think this might be the third year that we've done this. SAG-AFTRA represents a number of professionals in the media industry, including journalists, and we are more than happy to provide information and resources to those working in media, so that they can be equipped when they're going into look for a job or negotiate a contract, or basically deal with everyday employment related issues. And we look forward to being in Houston with all of you, and hope that we can be of value tonight and provide some information and answer your questions as best we can.
Mary, thank you so much. And I see that Ellen and Amy are on a call together, so I'll have you both introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Ellen Huang. I'm the Senior Director of EEO and Diversity, and different from Mary. Mary and Amy both work in the broadcast department, and SAG-AFTRA actually has a dedicated department toward our diverse communities within our membership. So it makes a lot of sense that we're part of AAJA again, and I look forward to being there. And, you know, besides sort of I do specifically more like educational programming and outreach. And we also have the EEO side of us, where those who are dealing with issues of discrimination or harassment would call our department, and we can help them resolve some of that from the union side. So I'm glad to be with you.
Perfect.
Hi, everyone. Good to see everyone. My name's Amy. I'm new to the SAG-AFTRA LA office, but I come from our San Francisco local. I just joined this office about a month ago, and looking forward to seeing everyone in Houston as well. I work very closely with Mary and the broadcast team, administering contracts for both radio and television. And we've done in both regions workshops about getting your first job, getting a union position. What does that mean? Things to look for when you're talking to employers, things to think about. So looking forward to talking tonight.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. And for those of you who are watching our live stream, you can also get involved in the conversation. We have a Twitter account that you can tweet us at. It is at AASMBJ. It's a mouthful, I know. It stands for Asian American Small Market Broadcast Journalists. So you can tweet us using that handle. And you can also tweet us using the hashtag AAJA Hangout. So if you do have questions, feel free to tweet us using either the hashtag or the handle or both, and we can definitely get your questions answered by our SAG-AFTRA participants. Well, Houston, that's what we're all excited about. It's happening very, very soon, next month, really. And so I think the first thing that we really want to hammer out is getting in touch with SAG-AFTRA. If you are going to the convention and you want to get in touch with them, you want to hang out with them, you want to learn what they can help you with, they do have office hours. And so without further ado, if any of the representatives want to go ahead and explain how they can get in touch with you and when they can do that, that'd be great.
I can handle that, Stephen. So our partnership with the AAJA has included office hours, I think, for a few years. And what we do is we make ourselves available by appointment. You can talk to a SAG-AFTRA rep whether you're at a union station or not. So if you have questions about a contract, if you have questions about changing a job, if you have questions about, concerns that you might have about diversity issues in your newsroom, about discrimination, we make ourselves available, and you can connect with us through your organization's AAJA's website, and we can provide our contact information as well, to make those appointments, and they are confidential. There's no one else in the room besides a SAG-Aftra representative and you. And we'll do everything from look at your employment agreement and answer questions, to having, some real difficult conversations, if that be the case, about some issues that you might be having at work, and we can kind of advise you and point you in the right direction as to how you might resolve those issues. And there'll be somebody there both with a legal background and a contract background, as well as from our diversity department, because it's important that we be able to, answer whatever questions might come about.
And I just want to chime in here. This is really, really valuable information. I'm actually going through something like this myself, and I'm going to sign up for one of these office hour slots as well, because, this is legal advice. You might have to pay someone. And if you don't know someone, it might be difficult to get these really important questions answered. To have SAG-Aftra be this resource for us is really, really awesome. And I think that you should definitely take advantage of that if you haven't signed up for already. The office hours are going to be Thursday, August 9th, and Friday, August 10th. All the information is on the AAJA 18 website, which is aaja18.org. There you can find the specific times, the slots, the locations. It's all there for you. Ellen and Amy, anything you want to add in terms of what you guys might be able to do during office hours?
Well, I mean, we'll be there, and we'll have lots of flyers and anything else, so that you just have an ongoing resource in us. As Mary said, whether you're in the union or not, or what we like to call it is somebody who's a pre-member, which is hopefully somebody who will join our union, we'll have all kinds of information for you.
Yeah, I think it's also an opportunity to talk about, if you're looking for another position, what to consider. And if you just want to have bounce ideas off of us, we'll be available just to talk it through, thinking of moving to Seattle, maybe some of the pluses and minuses about just talking it through. And so we'll be there.
Well, let me ask kind of a generic question. So we're part of the small market broadcasters. So not many stations in small markets, at least the ones that I'm familiar with, do have unions. And so, as we move from small markets to mid-sized markets to larger markets, then the union issue becomes more of a picture for us. So what advice do you have, kind of generically, for small market reporters who are looking not just to move up considerably in market size, but also to join a union? What do they need to know?
Well, I think what's really important is just to be, have the information and the resources available to you to really understand maybe what your contract says, what it might prevent you from doing in terms of making a move, if that's the case, what the expectations are from your employer. But also, we do have some contracts in some of the smaller markets. What we we look at this as, a rising tide lifts all boats. So to the extent that we can give you this information, even when you're at a non-union station, you're at the start of your career, maybe your first or second job, that you feel that, you have somebody to go to. In parts of our industry, some of you may have agents, some of you may be thinking about that down the road, and some of you think, I can never afford an agent and what I'm being paid in this smaller market. And that's fine. That's why we like to be available to you, to be able to be that resource. I can't tell you how many relationships that I personally have formed through the various journalist conventions, where I am constantly in contact with people over the course of their career, to be that, shoulder to lean on, if you will. And as a representative of the union, we are happy to play that role in our industry.
And if any of you could talk about the importance of kind of being at this convention to just establish familiarity with people who show up, and just for this demographic of reporters and TV professionals, even radio professionals. Just talking about you guys have partnered with AAJA for many years now, being a constant resource for us at conventions. So whether it be new members or returning convention attendees, just talk about why it's important to sign up for something like this. Maybe someone might be on the fence or trying to figure out how to schedule it into the schedule. What would you say to recommend people to spend some time with you guys?
Go ahead, Ellen.
So from the diversity perspective, our union represents, actors, we have, broadcasters, but for me, in our department, EEO and diversity, we actually do have committees here. They're volunteer committees, and we need more broadcasters. We need more Asian American broadcasters to brainstorm how we can better reach out to other broadcasters that are API. And when you are able to be part of the union, that's part of this sort of service you can do, is to sit on a committee and actually come up with some initiatives that would address what's important to broadcasters. And I think that's really important. We want you to continue to participate. We have small budgets for each of these committees, and we would love to have more broadcasters on there.
Got a question for you guys. So does SAG-Aftra only represent on-camera journalists? Does it also, or can off-camera journalists participate as well?
So we represent a number of different kinds of positions all across the country. So it really depends on the particular station or news operation where you are. So we have people that do that are on camera, anchors, reporters. We have people that are completely digital. We have writers, producers, directors, photographers. And so it really is a function of where you are in terms of your market and what contract or what employer you're talking about in that market as to, in terms of who we represent at that particular station. But we're very familiar with all the various different kinds of employment because of the various contracts that we have where we might represent a pretty diverse workplace in terms of the positions.
Another quick follow-up to that, are there specific markets or cities that you guys are in terms of representing broadcasters? I figure that there's a national reach for that, but is there a way for, if someone's doing some market research to figure out where a SAG-Aftra union might be located?
Well, we have on our website, Sag-Aftra, we do have a listing of all of our stations and broadcast operations because, as you all might know, it's not just about stations anymore. So it's about different kinds of new media outlets as well. We have that listing on our website. But just to give you an idea where we actually have offices where we service broadcasters, and I'm going to miss one or two, so I apologize, but New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, St. Louis, Kansas City, Philadelphia, Washington, Baltimore, Boston, Hartford, Ohio, Pittsburgh, in terms of various Ohio markets, and I think I covered most of the major markets, but we also have some of the smaller markets. We have contracts in West Virginia. So it really depends on, I would recommend looking at our website if you're wondering if we actually cover a station that you're looking to be employed at.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. A quick plug. We know that the convention is going to be chock full of activities for everyone to enjoy and learn from. AASMBJ, so our small market broadcasters group, has created our own programming that will be included as part of the convention. It's called MMJ Live, Surviving and Thriving. It's all about sharing tips and tricks on being creative and finding things for your reel that make you stand out, good lighting techniques and tips, as well as just answering questions that people in the audience might have I will be one of the panelists. I've been at WTXL, which is the ABC affiliate in Tallahassee, for 4 years now. And so we are excited to present that to the attendees. It starts at 2:00 p.m. on Thursday, August 9th. But I also wanted to mention, right after that, at 4:00, Mary, you have something scheduled about unions. Would you mind sharing about that?
Are you talking about our reception that we're holding?
No, the everything you need to know about unions.
Oh, right. I am going to be serving on a panel about some of the union organizing that has been going on in journalism, and all variety of different platforms. You're seeing unions get contracts and organize the employees in those newsrooms, and so I'm going to be serving on a panel. We've seen an uptick ourselves in the number of contracts that we're achieving with newer employers, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And before I forget, Mary did mention this. Sag-Aftra and we are hosting another party. It's going to be awesome. It is our annual AASMBJ reception with Sag-Aftra. It will be Thursday, August 9th from 6 to 8. And it's actually at the hotel. In years past, it had been in a remote location aside from the hotel, but this time it's actually going to be in the hotel. So that's going to be really exciting. It's an opportunity for us to meet as an affinity group, to get to know Sag-Aftra representatives as well, just to kind of talk and chat. And it's always been a really exciting time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go for the past 2 years, but I finally get to go this year, so that will be exciting. Once again, Thursday, August 9th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Marriott Marquis Hotel.
Also, I think we have one
other
initiative too. We are presenting Story Slam again. So
yes, you already got me to my next point. Perfect.
Right. We have this incredible partnership that's sort of a broadcast journalists who are interested in sort of telling stories, how events have affected them as an API person. And it's kind of like a mini TEDx, very personal. And we will be providing somebody to coach some of the people that apply to do this. And it's just something that's, a personal story that's for 6 minutes. So that, I believe it's going to happen on Friday, with like the Saturday where we announce winners, right?
Yeah, it's scheduled for 5:30 on Friday the 10th. So that's definitely something that's exciting for everyone to enjoy. And I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask about this. You mentioned that that we're not talking about just stations anymore. There are new types of media that also have SAG-AFTRA representation. So maybe if Mary, if you want to talk about this, is that, how are we seeing media change in terms of, who needs unions, who needs SAG-AFTRA representation?
Right. So SAG-AFTRA and our sister union, so it might be WGA, it might be another union, are seeing a lot of activity in terms of organizing or unionizing new media platforms. We're seeing it just internally with contracts, broadcast operations that are having or enhancing their digital platforms. And what that means, I think, is that, the path, the employment path, the career path of a journalist coming out of J school has changed dramatically. Where it used to be that you might start in a smaller market and work your way up the market chain, you're seeing now journalists start in Chicago, out of Medill, for instance, or out of USC in Los Angeles, but they might start in a position that, is on the digital side of things. And, what's important about that is that, it's kind of a brave new world in terms of those platforms. The revenue models are a little bit different, and but it provides opportunity for people to maybe change the direction that they thought their career might take. from a union perspective, however, we want to make sure that just because it's a brave new world doesn't mean it should be a world where people are, taken advantage of and not treated properly. That, the basic rules of the workforce, should still apply to those positions, and people should be treated fairly and appropriately. And I know maybe Ellen might have, something to speak to on this front, but, with so many platforms just exploding, not just with journalism, but, across the media landscape, there are all kinds of opportunities for people who want to have careers in this area, but, with opportunity comes risk. And one of the roles that Sag-Aftra plays is to make sure that, people across the board have protections and feel that they can go into a workplace and feel safe and feel that they can go in and do their job without even if you're in a new platform, you should still be able to go to work and feel safe and be able to do your job without risk.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mary, for that. Ellen, Amy, anything else to add to that? Ruh-roh. Are you still there? They might have bounced. Oh, wait, no, they're here. Wait. Technical, they pop in and out every so often. Well, I will continue, and if they pop back up, then that would be fantastic. Yeah, let me just continue on. I think one of the issues that we're seeing is that there is no longer a traditional path to reporting or even a broadcast career. I mean, for me, I started out in Market 4 in suburban Philadelphia doing video work for a newspaper. I graduated from Columbia in 2013, and I jumped onto a suburban newspaper's video department, which was just starting out. Did that for a couple of years, then came down to Tallahassee, and I've been here for 4. But I have friends and colleagues who have started, in pretty high markets, doing different positions that weren't really available at the time before. So. When we talk about paths, I know sometimes we get market envy and try to compare ourselves with whoever is, where our friends ended up and things like that. But Mary, this is obviously really important. This is uncharted territory, as you mentioned. How important is it to know that there is a resource like Sag-Aftra out there, making sure that you're not being taken advantage of?
I think it's so hard. One of the great things about AAJA and some of the other journalist organizations is that they are places where you can go and really learn from each other. And one of the most wonderful things I see at these conventions, and even at some of the local work that you do, is that maybe more veteran journalists serve as mentors and really look to help the people that are coming into the industry. And even if they're coming in a different way, it's so hard to kind of navigate your way through your career, not knowing who you can trust. And I really find that a lot of the people at these journalist conventions are there because they appreciate the camaraderie, but they also look for ways to, help those people getting into the industry. That's a role that we, Sag-Aftra, love to play. But what I think we really enjoy and why we've continued to partner with your organization is it's really great to be in a place where there's a real feeling of everybody wanting to play that role in some way. To the extent that we're part of that camaraderie, it's a privilege, and it always has been. We, every time I get a call from somebody, and they're not a member, and they heard about Sag-Aftra, through one of the journalist conventions, I get very excited about that, because that means that people who might not have felt like they had somebody there for them to, answer their questions, now feel they have that resource. It just happened today. And it's like the best part of my day.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Mary. I actually wanted to mention that because I think the comfort and knowledge of knowing that a resource like you guys is available might be the difference between staying in the industry and leaving the industry. Because, I'll admit I have, conversations with myself and with others about, is it really worth staying in broadcast TV news? Knowing that, we come across our own challenges and maybe the contract is too difficult to comb through, and there's a lot of pressure just on a day-to-day basis in terms of dealing with management and knowing what your rights are. So to know that that you guys are available, maybe someone deciding, hey, I can do this with support and I can stay in the industry, or maybe it's time for me to find another career. But I did want to touch on another topic while we're talking about SAG-AFTRA. How can you be eligible to become a member?
So you're eligible to become a member in SAG-AFTRA when you become employed under a SAG-AFTRA contract. So whether that's as a broadcast journalist or as an actor or a recording artist, the minute that you obtain work under one of our contracts, you become eligible.
Gotcha. Ellen, Amy, I think you're back on.
We're back on, sorry.
Okay, cool. Didn't miss too much, but I did want to ask you both if you wanted to chime in about, the importance of having you guys as a resource and for people to know that you guys exist and to make use of you.
Yeah, I think it'll be great to meet everyone in Houston and we can answer any questions. We've done I've participated in a few workshops now. We recently did a broadcast workshop in Fresno, which is one of our smaller markets, and a lot of questions about, how to move to a larger market, what to consider. And so we can answer and have some of those conversations in this.
Awesome. Quick house cleaning note. I did confirm that the Story Slam winner will be announced at the end of Story Slam, so that's exciting. So we're about halfway, well, half an hour in, and I feel like there's a big question that we need to answer, which is, when is it time to start looking for an agent? I know that's something that I'm thinking about. I currently don't have one. I'm a few months out from the end of my contract, and so this might help me as well. But if any of you want to address, when generically do you think is the best time to start looking at one, and then what are some things you need to know about hiring an agent?
I mean, the way I have to answer this question every time I get this question is that it really depends on the individual, and I don't think that there is a specific right time for anyone. I know people that have had agents their entire career almost, and these people have looked out for them in so many good ways, and they rely on them. And then I know people who have chose to go it alone. I know people that have obtained agents very early on in their career, and then others later. I think it really depends on the individual and your career path. And what I mean by that is that, I know people that they just need to be in control of their job search, and they don't want to hand it off to somebody else. And if you're that person, you might not be looking for representation. But other people, they don't like talking to their boss about money or things like that. And so there's a reason why they choose to be represented. It's so driven by the individual. I think it's also driven by where you're actually employed. Some employers are less likely to, maybe engage with agents. We have an excellent relationship with a lot of the agents out there that represent our broadcast members. And one of the most important things that they can do, and they do, is contact us when one of their clients is about to move to a union station, because they want to make sure that they don't leave anything on the table and they understand our contract and how that interacts. Because the way our contract works is, we set the floor, and then the agent and the individual journalist bargains up from that. So, we work kind of in as a team to make sure that the client gets the best possible deal. But it's a hard conversation. I would recommend that you talk to some of the agents that, I know will be at AAJA. We have had panels in the past where we have agents on our panels for that specific reason. And I think it's really a personal decision.
Gotcha. Ellen, Amy, anything to add there? I know Mary kind of covered it all.
Yeah, I think Mary did a great job answering. I think her last point is really well taken. Different if you hire different professional folks in over your life, right? For example, hiring a real estate agent, that not everyone is the perfect fit, and you got to find the right fit for you. And I think that's the same with the agent. Mary mentioned, like, agents call us to confirm different parts of the union contract, for example, number of vacation days, number of holidays, and it's really great when they call. They're very thoughtful. There's very thoughtful agents out there that want to make sure they have all the information. So we do answer a lot of questions from agents, and there's really thoughtful ones out there. So
great. Next question: how can I find out if a station I'm moving to is a union station? Is there like a database that you guys have, or what's the best way to determine that?
If you go to the Sag-Aftra website and you go to the section that talks about news and broadcast, there will be a link on there to a list of contracts. And if you can't find that, my email is listed on that website. You can reach out to me. We have offices in a number of cities. So generally what we do is, if you're going to one of our union stations, we put you in touch directly with the person that handles that contract. We might even put you in touch with one of our member leaders who works at that station, so they can kind of give you the inside scoop as to how it is to work there. Because we, the three of us, are staff employees of the union. We don't work for these stations or platforms. So we like to put you in touch with somebody who is actually working in your field, and potentially one of your colleagues, and they're happy to talk to you. Sure.
Awesome. Thank you for that. This is probably a question that all of you could answer. We're talking about networking, especially at the convention. It's an opportunity for hundreds of people in journalism to be together, to talk, to chit chat. For those of us who are in smaller markets or mid-sized markets, how important is it not only to network with you guys, but also to rub shoulders with broadcasters who are in larger markets, to hear their stories and maybe figure out how they got to where they are?
Yeah, I would just on that note say, many of our broadcast members that are very seasoned and have been in the industry a long time have great advice, great firsthand experience they are willing to share. And they also love talking with, different people within the industry and what their experience is. So I think any networking opportunity, I would take advantage of it.
Perfect. Ellen, anything else?
No, I think what I would say, Mary and Amy really know the broadcast market and the networking, and because they're interacting with members, they're hearing all the stories. But I just wanted to say, from a diversity standpoint, there's also intersectionality, so for example, our department, for those who might be looking, who might have a disability and are finding like their workplace is inaccessible, or even going up to doing an interview and, inaccessible hallways or elevators or something like that. The union is a resource for all of that as well, where we can intervene and call the employer and say, hey, listen, you've got to comply with some of our policies and our laws. So, there's all kinds of stuff that the union provides.
Awesome. Ellen, thanks for that. I'm going to go ahead and kind of refresh everyone's mind if you're just tuning in. This is the 2018 annual pre-convention Google Hangout with Sag-Aftra, and we are the Small Market Broadcast Journalist Affinity Group. I am Stephen Giumo, co-chair of the group since 2015, joined by Mary, Ellen, and Amy with Sag-Aftra. Always a good time to hang out and get all of your questions answered. We are live streaming on the AAJA YouTube live stream. We're also taking questions through Twitter. If you can tweet us at AASMBJ or use the hashtag AAJA Hangout. We, of course, would love to share your questions with our group. Another question here. So we're talking about, when journalists decide to partner up or join SAG-AFTRA as members, what can they expect in terms of personal attention? We know that the office hours will be that one-on-one time that you mentioned, where you can basically confidentially ask people, really, really pressing questions that, they need answers to. But when you become a member and, you're either in a market where you have a physical SAG-AFTRA office or not, what can they expect when they become a SAG-AFTRA member?
So I'll speak generally to it, and then I'd like Amy to talk a little bit to how we create community amongst our members. I've been doing this for many years, and I do it because I really love the idea that I go to work every day being that person on the other end of the phone to answer somebody's questions or to be the shoulder to lean on. I mean, that's what we do. And we're in an industry where so many crazy things happen in the workplace. And people are taking advantage of for all different kinds of reasons. And it's hard to navigate that by yourself. And what we do at SAG-AFTRA is the staff people, and that's myself and Amy and Ellen, we serve as a professional resource on a regular basis. Most of my members have my cell phone. They don't call my office line. They text me. And if they have an issue, I'm 24/7, available to them. But we also create community with our member leaders. So we have in our different broadcast shops, and I say broadcast, but I really mean, any, media platform. We create community so that people that work alongside you take on the responsibility to be, member leaders. They might be called shop stewards, they might be called liaisons, but they have a role to be that, shoulder to lean on, to be that advocate for you. And we've been doing, we've been working on building that community a little bit more, and I'll let Amy speak to that, because what that does is it creates like a one-on-one resource for you in your shop, that for people that, with people who really understand what you're going through. So maybe Amy can speak to that a little bit.
Sure, yeah. If you're involved as a SAG-AFTRA member, one thing we try and do is do what we would call like a unit meeting or a worksite meeting, where we could bring lunch or just a quick kind of check-in with you and your colleagues at the work site to talk about workplace issues and just a check-in. And or we may do that at a restaurant away from your work site where people may be a little more comfortable and casual. And then in addition, we're working on a lot of programming. For example, Ellen and I partnered maybe, now it's been a year or two, on an event at San Francisco State where we had both members and students in the broadcast community participate in a day-long workshop on mentorship. We then took that kind of programming down to Fresno and did an event in Fresno this past April. Again, an opportunity for members to network with young people, students, give them tips and advice about entering into the workforce. In addition, something important that I've taken on in partnership with Mary is a Women in Broadcast, and an opportunity for women broadcasters, both radio and television, to get together and network and talk about different challenges and opportunities within the industry. Even a lot of the conversations that we'll have in Texas are discussed in those forums, you know, interview and strategies around successful interviews. I'm thinking about moving jobs. What advice do you have? So that's another programming piece we've been working very hard on, is just building a sense of community amongst our membership.
Wonderful. This question might actually be geared towards Ellen, because this isn't just a journalism convention, it's an Asian American journalist convention. So diversity, obviously, we kind of are that in our newsroom. I'm the only Asian American in my newsroom, has been that way ever since I started. But I'm wondering, you know, what makes it especially important for an AAPI journalist or another journalist of color to look into Sag-Aftra. So Ellen, maybe if you want to talk about that.
I just think the idea that we have a department that's dedicated to diversity, you know, that we want more and better jobs for our members, and that, you know, our department is constantly producing and trying to outreach to employers to say, you know, think beyond stereotypes or tokenism when you're employing everybody. Think about all kinds of aspects of intersectionality, like I just talked to you about. You know, if you're somebody with a disability, if you're LGBT, if you're women, you know, specific issues that women face, often like harassment issues. You know, we have the union has really taken a leadership position recently on you know, workplace harassment, given the Me Too issues. So we have come up with codes of conduct. We have talked about our 4 pillars, which include education. You know, we're putting together sort of statements of policy that can go into your workplaces, like in your wall, you know, above the water cooler. So we are a union that's really trying to change culture. And, you know, I know Mary and Amy have been dealing with some of those issues more recently in the stuff that's been in the news. So, yeah, I mean, that affects everybody. And as far as APIs, the intersection of being that and a broadcaster or female or LGBT, that's all something that our union takes very seriously.
Sure. I just had a question myself. Obviously, you know, with the political landscape and kind of the environment of being in the media at this time in our lives, obviously we saw the tragedy unfold you know, at the Capitol Gazette, you know, in terms of safety. How do you guys address workplace safety, maybe journalist safety? You know, I know newsrooms across the country have their own discussions, whether they're in unions or not. But is there anything that you guys can provide as SAG-Aftra reps in terms of kind of honing in on that point?
I'm going to let Amy speak to this because Amy's been really leading some of our safety initiatives.
Sure, great.
Yeah, a couple things. One, we've gotten groups together of our membership and asked, like, what are the priorities and what are some of the challenges you face in the field? In particular, a lot of our MMJs face a lot of safety concerns. So we have negotiated specific language into our union contracts to address safety. In addition, a lot of our stations, we do, you know, a quarterly or monthly labor management committee meeting just dedicated to safety. And it's an opportunity for management from like the operations side, news director side, as well as our members to just talk really honestly about what's they're facing in the field. Separately, we've also done some safety summits where we've engaged local police. For example, in the Bay Area, we do a biannual meeting where we include 6 different police departments: Berkeley, San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward, San Leandro, Alameda, and get them all together in one room with management, our member leaders, and the police, because they have a lot of advice. All the police departments have information officers that give their point of view. They want to meet reporters and journalists really to talk about safety in the field. So it's been this great partnership, and The police have gone above and beyond, offering, cell phones, emails to reporters. And I think this could also be replicated in other regions. It doesn't have to be, a SAG-Aftra shop. But they've been a wonderful resource because they have a lot of advice, even like for MMJs, where and how to park their cars if you're going to a protest or a rally, right? So it's been something we've found very fruitful. And then when we go to the bargaining table and are in negotiations, it's been a real honest conversation. And some of our stations, they do hire guards or security for certain events. But it's been a real partnership with the stations. So.
Gotcha. Quick question. Are there any other SAG-Aftra initiatives like safety that members have found particularly useful or beneficial? Obviously, I know that safety is, a constant concern, topic that's discussed in newsrooms. But, as Amy mentioned, there are, initiatives that you guys have in place. Are there other types of initiatives that you guys can mention?
Well, I mean, I would say that safety and our diversity initiatives have really been key for us recently. And what I'd like to add to what Amy and Ellen has said about that is that, we've made a conscious effort not to be just reactionary. I mean, that's our job, is to react to what happened and advocate for our members in those situations. But what we've done in the diversity and the safety areas is focus on what our members, you who work in the newsrooms, you have a better idea of what needs to be done. I can't tell you how many times that I listen to people and are like, oh my gosh, why aren't they doing this?
Yeah.
And what we, right? I mean, I always say, if, the journalists could run the newsrooms, right? But what we said, we provide kind of a, just with the union management relationship, it's basically putting both management and the union on the same level in the same room with a common goal of achieving our best in those two areas. And so what does that mean? Not just reacting to what just happened, but how do we create an environment for positive change? And with Ellen's department, the diversity department, they have been incredible. And we've been partnering with them on a number of levels. And it's not just about, how do we sit with management and say, well, maybe you need to have more diversity in management. How we have committees where we talk about hiring, and not just in the newsroom and management. We have committees that talk about, just news coverage. Why aren't you covering this area? And so, those are two initiatives I just wanted to highlight because of the positive nature of it. Other initiatives, are being a resource for people going into contract negotiations. We say PSC, that's personal service contract. So if you have an employment agreement, that's a longstanding initiative that we have where we can be that resource for you. If you don't have an attorney, you don't have an agent, and you really need to understand what's in those contracts. And so we do that. With the advent, of MMJs, which is now not a new thing, right?
Right.
We're constantly looking for ways to make your work lives better, because I don't think unless you do that job, you really understand what is involved in it. And it's changing from place to place too. When I talk to some people, and maybe not in union environments, where their office is literally a Starbucks. And there are people out there like that because that's where the best Wi-Fi is. I mean, how do we as a union, play a role in highlighting those things? Because the people that are running the newsroom might not really understand what it's like for you to try to make your slot when the Wi-Fi is pretty slow. And it's those kinds of things, the initiatives of really understanding new technology too, and how we can play a role in advocating for you and being, or when I say we, I mean the union because the union is the membership. We're just the paid staff, but for them to play a larger role in working with management to change that, thinking in the newsroom when it comes to, new technology.
Sure. I can definitely relate to many things you mentioned there, which actually leads me to this. Let's say I would like to have a SAG-AFTRA union representation at my, like, what if I want my station to have SAG-AFTRA representation? Is there a way to kind of get that ball rolling? Is more consensus needed? How do we get more representation from SAG-AFTRA in some of our other markets that don't have them?
I might let Amy speak to this a little bit, but the basic, what I'll say basically is that's a decision of the newsroom. So it's essentially that we, the union, the institution, doesn't come in and say you're now union, right? It has to be the group of people that work there wanting to be represented. So Amy, maybe you can follow up on that for me.
Yeah, you use the word consensus, or it's a decision by you and your colleagues and your peers in the newsroom. And there's a couple different avenues that it often starts very kind of underground. People meet at a coffee shop, they meet at someone's house, talk about what they want to accomplish by the process of unionization. Then, depending on the employer, there's different ways that process takes place. The most traditional model is through an election where you and your colleagues have a secret ballot vote administered by the National Labor Relations Board. And that vote will take place, and then the union will become the authorized agent and work with member leaders to negotiate a first contract. So that's the formal process, but like you said, it's really you and your colleagues getting together. And then for us, often it makes sense if there's an O&O that we don't represent, but we represent many of the others, or a certain ownership group, right? It would make sense maybe we talk and meet with folks with a certain like radio ownership group. And then we also represent folks in public media, which can be a different format to unionization, but the traditional way is through an election.
Gotcha. Does a news director need to be on board with this too? Because I feel like sometimes we'd be like, we'd love to have this, but our news director would totally be in the way of this. So how much of consensus do we need?
Right. So the creation is of a bargaining unit, which is you and your colleagues who have the same responsibilities, right? So it would be reporters and anchors, and management would not be included in that process, right? So if you have the ability to hire and fire, you're not included in the bargaining unit. So it's a great question though, because when you're in the process of collective bargaining, often having a good relationship with your news director helps that process along, but he or she would not be included in a unionization because they're management.
Right. Perfect. We're just about to wrap up here, but I did have one final question. Obviously, so I co-chair the small market broadcasters. We also have a student broadcasters group. And so I would imagine that quite a number of people going to Houston, maybe first time AAJA convention attendees, they're going to the convention for the first time, and they want to utilize you guys as a resource. What advice do you have for these newbies per se in terms of going to the convention? How should they utilize their time at the convention, especially with you guys as a resource?
Oh, I think any and all of what we just described. Whether we had a really great turnout of student, journalists, and for our mixer, and so that's a great place. I mean, you're gonna meet veterans who are so easy and accessible to talk to because they really want to mentor you. So that's a really wonderful thing where we're able to get all generations of folks. And different experiences. And I mean, just the idea that you might have to figure out, as anybody, coming out of school, like doing a professional contract, right? So the idea that you can make an appointment and access any of us and talk about all that stuff is great. And just the protections that the union is going to give you, just a place to aim to someday become a member. I think those are all great.
Perfect. Anything else from any of you?
I guess the other thing I would say is, besides broadcasters, we do represent actors. It's, one thing that SAG, Screen Actors Guild, was very well known for. But we did get some questions about people who are like, well, I'm going to appear in somebody's movie, playing a journalist. Like, how does that work? We also have, podcast agreements now. So if you're going into that area, audiobooks, if you're going to use your skills to read audiobooks. And so there's so much stuff you can become. I'm sure, journalism is sometimes you've got to take on some other jobs and use your skills. And so I think it's great because it allows for your flexibility to be at a place where, we have trainings and classes and all kinds of stuff that are oriented towards those fields too.
Perfect. Well, for anyone tuning in late, this hangout is recorded, so you'll be able to watch it back if you missed any advice, or if you just want to share it with someone who you think this might be a valuable resource to. And once again, I do want to mention the office hours for SAG-AFTRA at the convention. They will be Thursday, August 9th and Friday, August 10th. The specific hours are listed on the AAJA convention website, which is AAJA18.org. I also want to re-mention our networking reception, our joint SAG-AFTRA AASMBJ reception. That is Thursday, August 9th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Marriott Marquis Hotel. And then once again, we do have SMBJ sponsored programming. And then Mary mentioned that she'll be a panelist on the Everything You Need to Know About Unions program as well. Mary, Ellen, Amy, thank you so much for an hour of enrichment, enlightenment. I learned a lot, and I definitely, like I said, I'll be signing up for one of those office hour slots to make sure that I utilize my time to the best of my ability. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you in Houston, I guess.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
All right. Take care, you guys.
Take care.
Bye.